So this is very encouraging news that we only had one community-acquired case overnight in Queensland, and that was the perfect case, if I could describe it as that. This was one of those participants in that party that happened at Byron Bay. So when the person came back to Queensland, they went into quarantine and they were tested on Monday night, and they were negative on Monday night. Then they were tested again Wednesday morning when they were positive. So they have been in quarantine during their infectious period, so are no risk at all. So definitely a linked case, but also that additional bonus that they were in quarantine. And that was our one community-acquired case. And the reason I can be reasonably confident that we're managing these two outbreaks is the amount of testing. The amount of testing over the last 48 hours has been astronomical. Thank you to every single person who's come forward. I know it takes time. I know there are queues, so thank you for doing that. And because of that, we can be reasonably confident that we don't have other chains of transmission happening out there in the community. But for the next 14 days, we will need to continue that testing. So please keep coming forward if you have any symptoms at all, or if you've been to one of those 118 exposure sites that are up on our website. If you've been to one of those, please make sure you continue to come forward so we find the first case. And we can then manage it so quickly, like we did with this second cluster. That nurse was fantastic. She was the first case. She came forward. We got on top of it really quickly due to her work and due to the work of Queenslanders. So now we can be talking about lifting those lockdown restrictions and going to a reduced level of restrictions. Now we have to, unfortunately, keep those restrictions that have been in place for the rest of Queensland in place for the next 14 days because we're not completely cleared yet. We think we can manage it with those restrictions and with the response that we've seen from Queenslanders, but it doesn't mean the outbreak's over. It just means that I don't believe we need the lockdown to manage this outbreak going forward. We can use those other restrictions and the response that Queenslanders have put in. So this is really, really important. So over the next 14 days, if everyone in Queensland can do the required processes, the required response, which is wearing masks, always indoors unless you're in your own home or you're at work and you can socially distance because you're in your own office or you're in an area where you can socially distance. Or, of course, if you're in your own car and there's no one else other than your family in the car. So you do need to, but everyone knows brilliantly what to do. You need to use some common sense. So it's indoors unless you're in a situation by yourself or you're sitting down to eat or drink. Once you sit down to eat or drink, or you're under the age of 12, although I must admit I've seen a lot of kids out there wearing masks, which is great to see. They don't need to, but if they would like to and they can do it, then why not? It's a great thing to teach our kids going forward. So mask wearing is really important. Outdoors, it's great to see. I think everyone's got a mask on except us two. It's great to see everyone wearing masks outside. But if you're by yourself outside, you're at the beach, you don't need to. Of course, if you're strenuously exercising, you don't need to wear a mask. I don't want people to compromise their health by wearing a mask. That would be illogical. So strenuous exercising outdoors or indoors in a gym, for instance, you don't need to wear a mask. So please do use some common sense, which is what I've been seeing happening. So that's first, that's masks. Then secondly, please only have a maximum of 30 people in your own private residence because we know that's where transmission first happens. So if we do have a case, we know that that's where we'll see it transmit. We saw it with that party down at Byron Bay. Those 11 people, they were in an Airbnb, so a private residence, and now all of them, virtually all of them, have become infected. So we know that private residents are a risk. So a maximum of 30 people in a private residence, and make sure you know who they are, so that if you do have a case, we can come to you and contact trace all of those people very, very rapidly, because we know this virus transmits rapidly in many cases. So that's really important. Then the other one is that we need to keep our most vulnerable safe. When the vaccine has not yet been rolled out for long enough to our aged care facilities, and we know to not enough of them. So that means aged care facilities, disability care facilities, our hospitals and our prisons need to, for the next fortnight, only have end-of-life visitors. They can't have other visitors, which I know is very, very difficult over this Easter period. So that's another concern, but we need to continue that going. Hopefully when we get all of those sites vaccinated in the future, we won't have to do that again. But we need to at the moment, protect our most vulnerable. Then the other thing, I know this is difficult for businesses, and I thank businesses very, very much for their support. Everyone needs to sit down in any hospitality venues, any venues indoors. They've got to sit down while they're eating and drinking. Take their mask off, of course, when they've sat down to eat and drink, but sit down. You can get up to go to the bar if you're in a pub to pick up your drink or your meal, but then go back to your seat. And that's important because we saw transmission of this virus in the restaurant in Byron Bay. So someone sitting at an adjacent table. So we need to know who's sitting where so we can work out who's highest risk and make sure we get hold of them very, very quickly. Then the other thing I ask of everyone is please make sure you do leave your contact details so we can really quickly get hold of people. Just double check, it's so easy to do. I've done it myself. Make sure that the mobile phone number you leave is accurate. It's so easy to get one digit wrong. Just double check when you put that information there, because the quicker we can get hold of people and contact trace, the quicker we can then immediately get out of whatever issue it is. So there's a lot of things there. They're really important to do, and if everyone does them, we'll get through this as quickly as we can. Then I'm leaving the most important to last, but you all know this one. That is, if you're sick, just stay home. Doesn't matter how mild your symptoms are, just stay home and enjoy your own home and get yourself tested. That's critical. That is the most critical thing that will keep all Queenslanders safe. Thank you very much.